Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have DMX. DMX, also known as Earl Simmons, was an American rapper and actor and just absolute legend. In interviews, DMX has shared stories about his belief in the existence of demons and his experiences with the supernatural. DMX has claimed that he was visited by a demon when he was a child and that the experience left him feeling traumatized. He also said that he had encountered demons in his adult life and that he believes in the power of prayer and spiritual protection to ward off their influence. In an interview with the Breakfast Club radio show, DMX spoke about a particularly intense encounter with a demon while he was staying in a hotel room. He described feeling a dark presence in the room and being physically attacked by an invisible force. DMX said that he used prayer and spiritual techniques to banish the demon from the room. DMX's experiences with demons and the paranormal have been a source of fascination for many of his fans, and they have contributed to his reputation as a larger-than-life figure in the music industry that will be remembered for many years to come. Demon X, that's so funny. Aw, R.I.P. In our number 9 spot today, we have Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger is an American underground filmmaker and author known for his experimental and surreal films that often explore themes related to occultism, mysticism, and sexuality. Anger has been associated with the occult since the 1940s, and he is considered one of the most influential figures in the American underground film scene. While Anger has never claimed to have had any direct encounters with demons, he has incorporated occult symbolism and rituals into his films and writings. In his book, Hollywood Babylon, Anger details the sordid and often scandalous history of Hollywood, which he believes is linked to the dark forces of the occult. One of Anger's most famous works is the film Invocation of My Demon Brother, which features a soundtrack composed by Mick Jagger and includes footage of various occult rituals, including a black mass. The film has been interpreted by some as a genuine attempt to invoke demonic forces, although Anger himself has denied this interpretation. Despite his reputation as an occultist, Anger has also been a vocal critic of organized religion and has described himself as a follower of the philosophy of Thelema, which was developed by occultist Aleister Crowley. Thelema emphasizes individualism and the pursuit of one's own true will, and it has been embraced by many other artists and thinkers throughout the 20th century. In our number 8 spot today, we have Bob Larson. Bob Larson is an American preacher and radio and television personality and a controversial Christian evangelist who has made a name for himself as an exorcist and paranormal investigator. Larson has claimed that he has personally been possessed by demons on multiple occasions and that he has successfully performed exorcisms on thousands of people. According to Larson, his first encounter with demonic possession occurred when he was a young man living in Denver, Colorado. He claims that he was taken over by a demon and began speaking in tongues and experiencing physical symptoms such as convulsions and blackouts. Larson's claims of demonic possession have been met with skepticism by some who argue that he is exploiting people's fears and insecurities for his own gain. However, Larson has a large following of devoted supporters who believe that his work as an exorcist is a legitimate form of spiritual healing. Regardless of whether or not Larson's claims of possession are true, his work as an exorcist has made him quite a controversial figure in the world of paranormal investigation and a source of fascination for many people. In our number 7 spot today, we have Lorraine Warren. We all know Lorraine Warren, okay? Of course, she was a renowned paranormal investigator and author who, along with her husband, Ed Warren, investigated numerous cases of alleged hauntings and demonic possessions. According to Lorraine, she was herself briefly possessed by a demon during an investigation in 1973. During the investigation, Lorraine reportedly felt a dark presence inside of her and began speaking in an unknown language. She also experienced physical symptoms such as convulsions and difficulty breathing. Lorraine's husband Ed, who was also present, was able to perform a ritual to expel the demon from her body. Lorraine's claims of being possessed have been met with skepticism by some who argue that the Warrens were more interested in promoting their own work than in conducting unbiased investigations. However, Lorraine's reputation as a paranormal investigator has earned her a place in pop culture, and her stories about haunted houses, demonic possessions, and other supernatural phenomena continue to captivate audiences. I mean, the Conjuring series is highly successful, and it's based on the work of the Warrens. In our number 6 spot today, we have Lucy Liu. Actor and artist Lucy Liu, in a 1999 interview with Us Weekly magazine, shared a chilling experience she had with a ghost while staying in a haunted hotel in New Mexico. According to Lucy, she was sleeping in her room when she suddenly woke up in the middle of the night to find a ghostly figure standing at the foot of her bed. The figure was dressed in a cowboy hat and boots and appeared to be a man from the Old West. Lucy said that the ghost spoke to her in a language she couldn't understand and then disappeared. Lucy's encounter with the ghost left her feeling unsettled, and she reportedly slept with the lights on for the rest of her stay at the hotel. Especially after this experience, Lucy has said that she believes in the existence of ghosts and is open to the possibility of the supernatural. In our number 5 spot today, we have Dan Aykroyd. Dan Aykroyd is a Canadian actor and comedian who is perhaps best known for his work on Saturday Night Live and in films such as The Blues Brothers and, I don't know, Ghostbusters. Aykroyd has a long-standing interest in the paranormal, which is exactly where his inspirations for the movie came from, and he is claimed to have had multiple ghostly encounters over the years. One of Dan's most famous ghost encounters occurred when he was living in a house in upstate New York that was reportedly haunted by the ghost of a former resident. Aykroyd has claimed that he saw the ghost on multiple occasions and that it even communicated with him through telepathy. Aykroyd's experiences with the ghost in his house reportedly inspired him to write the screenplay for the hit movie Ghostbusters, which centers around a team of paranormal investigators who capture ghosts in New York City. As if you didn't already know that. Aykroyd's interest in the paranormal has continued throughout his life, and he has been involved in numerous investigations and documentaries related to the subject. In our number 4 spot today, we have Anneliese Michel. Anneliese was a German woman who became the subject of a controversial case of alleged demonic possession. Anneliese was born in 1952 and began experiencing seizures and other symptoms of mental illness when she was young. Her family believed that she was possessed by demons and sought the help of Catholic priests to perform exorcisms on her. Over the course of several years, Anneliese underwent a series of exorcisms that were recorded on audio tapes. The tapes of Anneliese's exorcisms are disturbing and very graphic, with her screaming, growling, and speaking in multiple voices. Her physical condition deteriorated over time, and she eventually died of malnutrition and dehydration in 1976. Anneliese's case has been the subject of much debate and a lot of controversy. Some people believe that she was truly possessed by demons, while others argue that she was suffering from mental illness and was not given the proper medical care that she needed. The case has been the subject of books, documentaries, and films, and it continues to be a source of fascination and horror for many people. And many people are at least somewhat familiar with this story since it was the basis for the famous horror movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. In our number 3 spot today, we have Emma Stone. Emma is an A-list actor who's appeared in numerous films including La La Land, Easy A, and The Amazing Spider-Man. And not only this, but she has also shared a story about a ghostly encounter she had while staying in a hotel in Hawaii. According to Emma, she was staying at a historic hotel on the island of Kauai when she woke up in the middle of the night to find a ghostly figure standing at the foot of her bed. The figure was described as a young girl, and Stone said she felt a sense of calm and warmth in its presence. Stone said that she didn't feel scared or threatened by the ghost, and that the experience actually made her feel more connected to the history and culture of Hawaii. She later learned that the hotel was said to be haunted by the ghost of a young girl who had passed in the building many years ago. Emma's encounter with the ghost has been widely reported in the media, and it has helped to fuel her reputation as a believer in the paranormal. In our number 2 spot today, we have Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers was quite the television personality, known for her sharp wit and humor, as well as her blunt and often controversial opinions. Rivers claimed to have had a ghostly encounter in her New York City apartment that left her feeling shaken up. According to Rivers, she was in her bedroom when she saw the ghost of a woman standing at the end of her bed. The ghost was described as wearing a hat and a fur coat and had a sad expression on her face. Rivers said that the ghost seemed to be trying to communicate with her, but she couldn't understand what it was saying. Rivers claimed that the ghostly encounter left her feeling spooked and that she slept with the lights on for several nights afterward. She later learned that a woman had died in the apartment many years before, and she speculated that the ghost she saw was that woman's spirit. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Matthew McConaughey. I'll be honest, Matthew was someone I didn't expect to put on this list because he didn't strike me as a ghost believer, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Matthew McConaughey is an actor and producer known for his roles in films such as Dallas Buyers Club, True Detective, Interstellar, the list goes on. He is a great actor. In his memoir, Green Lights, McConaughey shares a story about a paranormal experience he had had while living in Hollywood. According to him, he was home alone one night when he heard a sound coming from the hallway. He got up to investigate and saw a ghostly figure walking down the hall towards him. The figure was described as a small girl wearing a pink dress, and McConaughey said that she didn't really seem very threatening, but rather curious. Matthew said that the ghostly encounter left him feeling unnerved, and that he struggled to make sense of what had happened. He later learned that the house he was living in had a history of paranormal activity, and he speculated that the ghost he saw was the spirit of a young girl who had passed in the house many years before. Matthew's story about his ghostly encounter has definitely only added to his reputation as enigmatic and unpredictable personality.
Number 10. George Lukens. Coming up first on our list is our oldest entry, one George Lukens, dating all the way back to the 17th century, back when there was just more demons around in the air and everybody was exorcising each other. George was possessed by an evil spirit named Yatin Demonica, causing him to behave, well, oddly. He was speaking backwards, speaking in tongues, making inhuman growls, and generally behaving like a guy who had a demon in his throat. He tried to see doctors, but found that it wasn't much help, and thus sought out the clergy, who sent 7 priests to tend to such a demon. The reverend leading them was afraid of the creature inside of George, fearing that he wasn't prepared to deal with such a demonic threat, and as such, he was accompanied by an entire group of priests to tend to Lukens. He was calm throughout the entire procedure, and they thought that they had vanquished the spirit inside of him and everything was hunky-dory, but for the rest of his life, George Lukens would complain about supernatural occurrences happening to him all the time. Perhaps you can never truly wipe the slate clean. And my friends, if you like what we do here, why not click through, spend the rest of the day watching scary, cool videos, and toss a subscribe our way. You won't regret it. Number 9. Anna Eklund. The next one was made into a movie, alongside most of the ones on this list. I didn't know there was such a market for exorcism movies, but I guess there is. This story is by no means a pleasant one, but did you really expect that from a video about exorcisms and demons? Anna's father preferred to keep things in the family, so to speak, and after repeatedly rebuking her father's illegal advances, Anna Eklund started to show strange changes in her behavior and health, although she was perfectly healthy when examined. Thus, she was taken to be exorcised. In 1912, she was exorcised for the first time. Shortly after, her father's secret lover, who was a black magic practicing witch, cursed Anna. There is so much going on in this story, and I feel like I need a lot more than a single minute to talk about it. I hate when my father's secret lover curses me. I hate when that happens. From here, Anna fell back into a state of supernatural disarray and was taken back to the convent, where her body revulsed upon being near sacred ground. She became swollen and heavy, weighing down the bed she was laying on. The priest believed this was the physical weight of the spirits inside her, and believed that the spirits inside her were the lost, damned souls of her father and his mistress. After 23 brutal days, the priests finally managed to wrestle control and free her from their torment. Number 8. Michael Taylor. Our next entry is the case of Michael Taylor, a once loving father who was plagued by chronic pain and depression and possibly demonic possession. He lived in the town of Ossett in England alongside his wife, their dog, and children. Michael had suffered a severe back injury earlier in his life that led to him chronically being in extreme pain and unable to hold down a job. Prompted by a friend to try spiritual healing, Michael befriended and soon found himself enamored with a young pastor named Marie Robinson. This infatuation would take over his life, and soon Michael would ignore his family and was acting irrationally, violent, and according to friends, just not seeming himself. An exorcism was performed on him, lasting through the night and into the morning, with Michael convulsing and lashing out at priests the entire time. Priests claim that Michael had 40 demons living inside him. I was surprised there's room for anything else. Despite this, they sent him home to rest for the next session, and what happens next is a tragedy. At 9:45 the next morning, police were called to the Taylor residence to discover Michael Taylor naked, slicked in blood, and curled up in the front lawn, screaming that he was covered in the blood of Satan. It had turned out that night, he had attacked his wife and the dog. At trial, he insisted his actions were not his own, but rather the possession of the demons inside him. He was incarcerated for only 4 years. Number 7. Gina. More than a few exorcisms on this list have served as the inspiration for big budget Hollywood movies, but this is the only one that was broadcast on a TV channel for everybody to see. Reverend James LaBarre oversaw the exorcism of a young woman named Gina, who is believed to have been possessed by the devil. The Reverend was quoted as saying, "We thought it was important for people to understand that the devil does exist, and most important, that the church has a means to help." This was certainly not without its controversy. Many detractors, both in the church and outside of it said that it was sensationalizing and exploitative of the young woman who, if she really was suffering from problems, mental or otherwise, she probably would have done a lot better without a camera crew pressed up against her filming her most private moments. It was described as being medieval, propping up a mental patient for the entertainment of masses on a Sunday. And in actuality, the woman was a mental patient and was undergoing treatment at the time for psychotic episodes, although her family believed her problems were supernatural in nature. In the end, the church declared the exorcism a success and said that while most of the evil had been driven out of Gina, she was still plagued by psychological problems, and in the Reverend's own words, she is up and about but not well. Surely being part of a televised exorcism had nothing to do with that. 6. Marcicia Corici. What would happen when a member of the cloth gets possessed? We don't usually hear about stuff like that, like nuns and priests. Well, in the case of Marcicia Corici, that's exactly what happened. She was a member of the convent, a nun living in Romania, when she was thought to have come under possession of a hostile demon that had taken up residence inside of her. She believed that she had heard the demon speaking to her at all hours. Initially, she was treated for schizophrenia, but when priests found that it wasn't enough, they decided an exorcism was in order. She was restrained after she refused to drink holy water, which makes sense. I've never tried it, but I bet it doesn't taste great, demon or no. She was bound to a cross, gagged with a towel of holy water, and kept without food or water for 3 days in the church's basement. Unsurprisingly, she would die from this. The priest who led the exorcism pleaded that he was innocent in his involvement with Marcicia's death, as he was simply trying to remove spirits from her as God intended. I get where you're coming from, but isn't the point to remove the spirits so she can go on living? In the end though, her official death was ruled that it was an overdose of adrenaline after she was taken to the hospital. Number 5. Gottlieb Dittus. Gottlieb Dittus, beside having one of the most fun names a human can say, was the subject of an exorcism in the late 18th century in Germany in a small village. And yeah, I was kind of surprised that Gottlieben was a girl's name too. Miss Dittus lived a quiet life with her siblings in the family home until she started to experience paranormal activity during the dark hours of the night. Scratches across the floor appearing out of thin air, furniture being dragged around seemingly by nothing. Miss Gottlieben told a doctor as well that she was having vivid nightmares where she was visited by a demonic spirit of an old woman holding a baby in her arms, normal everyday stuff. Gottlieben moved to stay with a cousin, but the paranormal activity would follow her, leading one Reverend Blumhardt to take it upon himself to free the woman of the evil energy lying dormant inside her. The exorcism was pretty brutal, even by exorcism standards, which are not nice. Reports say Gottlieben vomited sand, glass, blood, nails, and just a little bit of pea soup. During the exorcism, the spirits inside Gottlieben allegedly jumped out of her and made their way into her sister who was watching, leading the Reverend to duel the demons inside both women, although thankfully ultimately prevailing. Number 4. Clara Germanicale. In 1906, in the town of Natal, South Africa, an orphan named Clara began to experience bizarre happenings that no one could explain. Overnight, she was speaking fluently in languages she'd never heard before, and this was a good 100 years before Duolingo even happened, so no one knew how she could know this. It was also said that she could know things about people that she shouldn't possibly, intimate secrets, very personal details. And these are both pretty odd, but it was also reported that she would levitate in the air sometimes, so, that's pretty weird too. A nun at the orphanage reported that her body would turn rubbery and she would move across the ground like a snake, showcasing surefire signs of possession. A pair of priests attempted an exorcism that lasted for days. Clara would lash out at the priests and even tried to strangle one. It took 2 full days of constant bombardment, prayer, and holy water, but eventually, allegedly, Clara levitated from her bed and then fell back down and was free from the control of the spirits. Number 3. Arne Johnson. Now these last 3 are all our big budget famous exorcism cases, and kicking us off is the case of David Glatzel and Arne Johnson. If you're a big horror buff, you might recognize these two from The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. But the real case is scary enough, they barely needed to change anything for the movie. The son of the Glatzel family, David Glatzel, began to complain that he was being harassed by an old demonic man that only he could see that would threaten him. The nervous family contacted the church and eventually got in contact with the famed demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, who attempted to exorcise the boy. They They were successful, but one of the demons inside of David allegedly made their way into Arn Johnson, the boyfriend of David's sister. Johnson would then go on to violently attack his landlord with a pocket knife, and upon arrest, he insisted that it was the devil inside him that made him do it, and he was completely out of control of his actions. Eyewitnesses would say after this, Arn would growl gutturally and act irrationally and just wasn't himself. Could it have really been the spirit of a demon that drove him to commit such heinous crimes? I haven't actually seen the movie, but maybe they shed more light on this than that. Number 2. Annalise Michel. This case is Annalise Michel, which is made famously into the exorcism of Emily Rose, and it's not a particularly happy tale, I will warn you. Michel was suffering from severe mental health problems and was staying at a psychiatric hospital. From here she developed a strong resistance and intolerance to any sort of Christian symbolism, convulsing upon seeing crosses, and claimed to hear voices of demons. This led her family to believe she was being possessed, who contacted priests and demanded she be exorcised. Annalise's case was famous for how long and brutal it was. Annalise was restrained and exorcised for hours on end for months. Over the span of 10 months, she was exorcised 1 to 2 times weekly for hours on end. Near the end, she stopped eating and drinking entirely. Annalise would pass from malnutrition and starvation. In the end, her death was ruled a negligent homicide, and her parents and the priests who performed it were charged for their misdeeds. And finally, number 1, Roland Doe. Well, if we're talking about famous exorcisms, it's going to be pretty difficult without mentioning maybe the most famous exorcism, the case of Roland Doe. If it doesn't immediately stand out as recognizable to you, maybe if I told you it's the basis for the film The Exorcist, you might perk up. The real case is pretty different than the film though. No pea soup, no twisted heads, but lots of demons. Young Roland Doe was an isolated boy who spent a lot of time with his aunt, who was fascinated by the occult. She gave him a Ouija board and taught him of the spirit world. When she passed, Roland began to experience all the telltale signs of possession. Strange growling, furniture around the house moving, so an exorcism seemed like it was in order. But the demons had a tight grip on Roland's soul. During the exorcism, the boy managed to escape his restraints and slash at a priest's throat with a broken bed spring. The family moved to St. Louis after red scratches that appeared to spell Louis appeared on Roland's body. From here, he was exorcised yet again by more seasoned priests, who after a brutal battle freed the boy's soul, who claimed he saw a vivid vision of Saint Michael battling Satan for control of his soul while he was asleep. By all accounts, luckily, he went on to live a fairly normal life afterwards. One wonders if he ever saw the movie.
Coming up at our number 10 spot, we have Zach Bagans' The Haunted Museum. Zach Bagans' The Haunted Museum is called a haunted museum for a reason. Located in Las Vegas, there's some pretty scary stuff in there. It is known for having possessed objects, and it is proud to do so. From a painting with the real ashes of Charles Manson painted into the eyes of a portrait of him, to Ted Bundy's glasses, this is a museum with some of the most low vibe items from some of the worst criminals, and so obviously it would be haunted and the items would be possessed. I mean, they advertise it in the name, so they own it. In our number 9 spot, we have the Swansea Museum. The Swansea Museum is said to have one very possessed item, the Swansea Devil. This is an item that looks like the devil, and people have confirmed that they definitely think it is haunted. It has a pretty interesting backstory actually. In 1890, an architect by the name of Sir Arthur Bloomfield beat out a local architect for the job of rebuilding the ancient St. Mary's Church, and the local architect was not okay with it. Apparently, a few years later, he ended up purchasing a row of cottages facing the church, and so he tore them down and built a large red brick building there, and he put a statue of a smiling devil on it. He then placed a curse on the church, proclaiming it to be destroyed and that the devil will look upon it and its rebel smiling. Yikes. Jeez, I love that he wants to rebuild a church, a place for love and forgiveness, and then because he doesn't get his way, he fully does everything that he can to make the church a negative place. Clearly a man who studies the Bible and its teachings. Not. Perhaps he didn't get the job because the priests sensed how insane he clearly was. Anyways, the devil statue resides in this museum and it's clearly haunted. In our number 8 spot, we have the Royal Scottish Museum. Ah, the Royal Scottish Museum. That was British, not Scottish, Melissa. It honestly sounds like a classy place to go to. Probably because of the word royal, but whatever. Apparently this museum is slightly terrifying because it is the holder of one very possessed item. An item so haunted that if you touch it, you will die, as well as your family. Not joking. The woman from Leb statue is at this museum, and it has been known to belong to many families that have all passed away after owning it. Within only 6 years of owning it, all 7 members of this one family passed away. This actually happened a few times until it was donated to the museum. The artifact is said to be from 3500 BC, but was found in Cyprus in 1878. So yeah, to say that the museum is showcasing a possessed object would be an understatement. In our number 7 spot, we have the Louvre. The Louvre, located in France, is one of the most beautiful museums in the world. Honestly, it is one of my favorite places to visit in the world, even though it definitely has 1 or 2 or 10 possessed paintings on display. From Dante and Virgil in Hell, to the Sabine woman, to the Children of Edward, to St. Peter of Verona, I have literally made another whole video on the haunted paintings at the Louvre because there's just so many. But of course, there would be. The Louvre houses some of the greatest artists in the history of the world. Of course, there will be some art that is created when a human is having a bad day, but also there are evil people that paint, and that energy would certainly come through in their paintings. But honestly, the Louvre is magical even with the possessed paintings. Put a visit to it on your bucket list for sure. In our number 6 spot, we have the Mutter Museum. The Mutter Museum, located in Philadelphia, is a museum that once started out as a sort of, Ripley's Believe It or Not, and eventually turned into, well, something else. An American medical inventor by the name of Dr. Thomas Mutter donated a bunch of tools and got it off the ground. It's a museum where you can find some odd medical items such as an amputation kit from the Civil War, and my personal favorite, a long human colon that apparently once had 40 pounds of, well, poop. I'm a classy gal. The area that people believe is filled with some possessed items is called the Bone Room. I wonder why. It is a room filled with human skulls. 139 skulls, in fact. Lord knows why. They probably all come alive at night like the movie Night at the Museum. Creepy. The skulls all have descriptions as to how their owners passed away. Like an odd little memorial. Not spooky at all. In our number 5 spot, we have the Museum of Death. The Museum of Death, located in Los Angeles, California, USA, is one of Hollywood's horror museums, in my opinion. It apparently has the largest selection of artwork from serial killers. So yeah, it definitely possesses 1 or 2 haunted items. Oh, and did I mention that the museum has a head as one of its items on display? Yeah, what the heck, right? It's the head of French serial killer Henri Landru. There are crime scene photos from the Manson murders, and also many execution devices. Gosh, as terrifying as this all sounds, why do I still want to go? Curiosity always wins. In our number 4 spot, we have Vent Haven Museum. The Vent Haven Museum is located in Kentucky, and not gonna lie, it fully gives me the creeps. It was created by a man by the name of William Shakespeare Berger. Great name. The museum is famous for its doll collection. Man, I'm not gonna lie, I loved dolls before Most Amazing. Now I find them terrifying. Hopefully I never have to do a haunted Barbie video while working here because that will probably destroy all of my happy childhood memories. Anyways, apparently this museum has 800 dolls. Yeah, a lot of people say that they are haunted, but honestly, if you walked into a space with that many dolls, I'm sure you probably would think that too. In our number 3 spot, we have the Museum of Shadows. Apparently this museum has gained a reputation for being one of the most haunted museums in the US. It is located in Nebraska, USA. Apparently it was once a brothel, so maybe that explains the initial low vibes, but in any case, it allegedly has over 1,000 possessed objects from all over the world. There are many reports of paranormal activity coming from the objects over the years, but also people have witnessed ghosts in this place and have heard laughter from time to time. Lovely. In our number 2 spot, we have the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast Museum. This is probably one of the scariest museums that I have ever come across, and that is because it is literally a former crime scene. It was previously the home of Lizzie Borden and her family, and this is the place where 2 of her family members, if you haven't heard the story of Lizzie Borden, well, she was accused of killing her father and stepmother, and most believe this to be true even though she was set free of all charges. They turned her house into an overnight museum, and the place is filled with gruesome photos that are in the rooms where the bodies were found. Apparently there is a celebration breakfast ready for you if you survive the night. Kinda terrifying and awesome at the same time. Most likely this place has a few possessed items lying around. In our number 1 spot, we have the Warren Occult Museum. The Warren Occult Museum in Connecticut is a museum that was opened by Ed and Lorraine Warren in the 80s, and the items inside are items that they accumulated on their travels to help free spirits and clear homes. The number 1 most haunted and supposedly dangerous item in their possession that is possessed is the Annabelle doll, of course. They also have a doll called the Shadow Doll that goes into people's dreams and supposedly stops their heart while they sleep. There is a large man structure that was used for satanic rituals and a human skull used for black magic. I mean, the list goes on and on. These guys aren't even hiding their possessed items, they're just owning them and showcasing them for the world to all get creeped out.
Starting us off at number 10 is Son of Sam, aka David Berkowitz. Now, I listened to a 2-hour-long serial killer podcast about him, so I'm very well versed in Mr. Berkowitz. Anyway, David was one of America's most notorious serial killers. He was active between 1976 and 77 and killed 6 women and wounded 7 others in failed murder attempts. His moniker came from his neighbor's dog Sam, who he hated more than anything. Believe me, in the podcast it talked about how much he hated the dog for at least 15 minutes. Like, come on, the episodes aren't that long. He then claimed the dog was possessed by a 6,000-year-old man called Sam who told him to kill people. David was adopted a few days after being born, and his adoptive mother told him his real mother had died during childbirth, which wasn't true, but that caused him to hate himself growing up. When he found out that that wasn't true in his teens, he started loathing women, and hence his victims ended up being all girls. David shot all his victims, trying to go for the headshot but not always getting it. When he was eventually arrested, he pleaded not guilty because of insanity and possession, but they rejected that and said he was fully competent. 2 weeks after his 25 to life sentence, he tried to jump out of a 7th floor window and was restrained but kept shouting Stacy was a I'd kill her again, I'd kill them all again. He then went on to retract his statement saying he was possessed, but in his later prison diaries, he wrote about how he was scared Sam would evolve into a human or demon in a more complete state. He's gone back and forth on his possession story so many times, so till this day, no one is truly sure whether he was possessed or he wasn't. Coming in at number 9 are the Satanists. So this one is so messed up I don't even know what to say. If it was like the 16th century right now, I'd be like, egad! Anyway, back in 2008, a group of 6 Satanists somehow lured 4 teens into woods located in the outskirts of Yaroslavl, Russia. The ringleader, Nikolai Golubyok, wanted to sacrifice and eat the teens in the name of the devil. When they got to the woods, the group stabbed each teen 666 times and then cooked their bodies in a massive bonfire, and then, well, bon appetit. One of them ate one of the girls' hearts. Like, I'm not making this shit up. Can you even imagine getting stabbed that many times? What part of your body would be left even? And you're probably wondering why no one came to help or if anyone even heard them scream. The woods were 300 miles northeast from Moscow, so they were very far from anyone. Their group also crucified a rat on an upside down cross, which was just a horrible cherry on top. The group then buried the rest of the body parts in a 250-meter pit, and when the corpses were finally found, the group started getting arrested one by one. When interrogated, one of the teens said, "Satan will help me to avoid responsibility. I made lots of sacrifices to him." Another one said, "I tried to turn to God, but it didn't bring me any money. I prayed to Satan and things improved." These people literally blamed Satan for being the reason behind the murders, and I feel like the devil sent his minions to possess these teens, because I don't see how anyone else could do this otherwise. At number 8, we have the trial of Arn Cheyenne Johnson. Now, this was the first case in America to use the devil made me do it defense in a murder trial, so it's a pretty big deal. Back in 1989, 1981, Johnson went for dinner with his fiancée Debbie and then landlord Alan Bono and a few others. All of a sudden, Johnson started stabbing Bono with a pocket knife and he ultimately died in the restaurant. In his trial, Johnson pleaded not guilty because he claimed he was possessed when the murder took place and cited his connection with Debbie's brother David and called the Warrens to the trial to testify. And by Warrens, I mean Ed and Lorraine Warren, the paranormal investigators and authors. A year earlier, David had started seeing demons that looked a bit like the thing from Insidious, and there was no explanation for all the bruises and scratches that were found on his body. Johnson and Debbie enlisted the help of a priest, but this only angered the spirit even more, who then made David speak in multiple voices and hiss at them. He said he felt like he was being choked by something and he had red marks on his neck despite no one having touched him. They called the Warrens, who dispelled the demons from the boy's body, but then they all went into Arne's body instead. After teaming up with the Diocese of Bridgeport and some priests, they got rid of 40 demons in Arne's body. In the end though, the court still found him guilty of first-degree manslaughter. Yikes. I feel like how though, like 40 demons? Clearly the guy's not at fault. Filling our number 7 slot is Tommy Smith. Back in Feb of 2015, 17-year-old Tommy was having an absolute nightmare of a day. 65-year-old Peter Churn drove a Range Rover, and that day Tommy wanted nothing more but the keys to his car and was prepared to steal them to get them. While he was attempting to break into the car, Peter came up from behind him to try and stop him, and Smith lost it. He pulled out his knife and stabbed Peter in the neck, the heart, chest, arms, back, everywhere. The stabbing frenzy was so haphazard that he actually broke the knife in half. Keep in mind, Tommy was very troubled. He had already been convicted of 57 offenses, but the poor boy had also been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which is a huge detail that turns this whole case around. The next year, Tommy went on trial for attempted murder, and he pled insanity and claimed a demon had possessed him the day of the incident. And I don't know if he was possessed, but I do know that mental disorder can really make you believe horrible things that aren't real. The court didn't believe him, but because of his diagnosis, he was cleared for murder but convicted for burglary and bodily harm. Guys, the miraculous part of all of this is the fact that Peter actually survived. He was sat in that courtroom with one eye watching his assailant be sent to a mental hospital for the rest of his life. Peter, you were a trooper. Now at number 6 is The Couple. So back in 2002, Danielle and Manuela Reda, a self-proclaimed Satanist couple, did something horrible. The couple had traveled to Scotland and England and learned about the occult and Satanism there, and that's when things started going wrong. The couple chose their friend Frank Hackett to sacrifice since he was quite funny, and they thought he'd be hell's perfect court jester. Wow, not a good time to be funny. They proceeded to stab him 66 times during the ritual and were wearing very over-the-top costumes. Daniel claimed the couple wasn't responsible for the murder since they were simply acting on the devil's orders, which were kill, sacrifice, bring souls. Apparently Satan had been watching the incident take place and was just stood there smiling. News of the murder only came after Manuela sent a letter to her mum saying, "I am not of this world, I must liberate my soul from the mortal flesh." Manuela, what the hell does that mean? Are you Satan immortalized? Either way, the couple was convicted and found guilty, so that's that. Coming in at number 5 is Dorothy Talby. So this may be one of the earliest American cases of trialing an insane person, if not the earliest one. Back in 1638, Dorothy Talby was known as a polite, respectable woman, part of the Salem Church, had a 3-year-old daughter, was quite trustworthy. But slowly, over time, she started becoming depressed and would burst into fits of anger and violence. Dorothy became delusional and tried to kill her own husband at one point, and during another fit, she refused to eat meat because God had apparently told her that meat was from Satan. Eventually, after refusing help, she was cast out of the church and bound to a post and whipped until she changed her way of thinking. The woman was possessed by some demon or another because then in November of that year she killed her daughter Difficulty by breaking her neck. Yes, her name was Difficulty. We don't need to joke about that, even though I've made many jokes in my head. We don't joke about the dead. Now Dorothy confessed at her trial after being threatened to be stoned, but keep in mind back then there was no difference between criminal behavior and insanity. Law was more biblical, so the punishment for murder was death. an eye for an eye. Puritan Governor John Winthrop said death was the only way for her since she was possessed by Satan himself. At number 4 is Michael Taylor. This one is a bit gruesome, so prepare yourselves, people. Michael Taylor became known after the Ossett murder case. He lived in Ossett with his wife Christine, and both belonged to a Christian fellowship group. Slowly but surely, Michael started displaying erratic and socially distant behavior, which is never a promising sign, is it? Like, that's never good. In one meeting at the church, Christine accused him of cheating on her with the leader of the group, Marie Robinson, to which he reacted by verbally attacking her and Marie. His behavior declined further, and he admitted that he felt evil within him, and then it was decided he had to be seen by some priests. Well, go figure, you've gone a bit loony, mate. His exorcism took all night, and they managed to pull 40 demons from his body, but several still stayed inside him. After a long holy night, they sent him home hoping for the best, but then he proceeded to violently murder Christine by tearing her eyes and tongue out, almost tearing her face off completely, and then strangling the family poodle to death. What did the poodle do? Like, honestly, what did the poodle do? He was arrested after authorities found Taylor wandering the streets naked and covered in blood. During his trial, he pleaded insanity and was sent to Broadmoor for a while, but upon his release, he got arrested again for touching a teen indecently. So, all in all, Michael's life just hasn't been great. Filling at number 3 slot is Sean Sellers Part 1. So some people are really the spawn of Satan, and 16-year-old Sean is definitely his favorite child. So back in September of 1985, Sean murdered a convenience store clerk called Robert Bauer, while his best friend Richard Howard just stood there and watched. When giving his testimony during Sean's trial, he said Sean did it because he wanted to see what it feels like to kill somebody. Okay, Robert, and you just sat there and watched? You just let him act on that and let him kill someone? You were the friend your parents asked, like, oh, would you just follow them if they jumped off a cliff? You are that friend who jumps off the cliff. Idiot. Now, the following year in March, Sean went on to shoot his mum and stepdad to death with a handgun, and did so in his underwear so blood wouldn't get on his clothes. He staged the whole thing to look like an intruder had done it, but we know by now that these setups always get exposed, and thus that was very much the end of Sean's free life. But let's think about this. A lot of factors led to Sean ending up the way he did and his instability. His mum Vonda was 16 when she had him, and his dad was an alcoholic who then abandoned the family when Sean was only 3. He was physically by his mum and granddad constantly while growing up, and his uncle would always make him wear his dirty diapers on his head. His mum then married a truck driver named Paul to try and bring some stability into everyone's lives, but that really didn't help. By the time Sean was 16, the family had moved cities over 30 times. But wait, there's more. Now at number 2 is Sean Sellers Part 2. Now apparently, while he was in high school, he drank his own blood during satanic rituals. He said flying demons were influencing him, and he brought the satanic Bible to every single one of his classes. He even wrote this in his own blood: I renounce God, I renounce Christ, I will serve only Satan to my enemy's death. When the murder trial came for his parents, Sean claimed his demon alter ego Azurat was controlling him during all the murders, and thus he had no control over his actions. Between the ages of 15 and 16, he had read the satanic Bible hundreds of times. He was eventually killed by a lethal injection in 1999, so goodbye and good riddance, Sean. And finally, at number 1 is Elizbieta Plakowska. This one really broke my heart because you can just tell how deeply disturbed this woman really was. So back in October of 2012, Naperville native Elizbieta started hearing voices in her head telling her that his son Justin and his friend Olivia were both possessed by demons. The voices kept telling her that killing them was the only way to salvation, so she did it. Olivia was spending the night at their house, and so she went and stabbed Justin 100 times and Olivia 50 times. She didn't just kill them, she killed the family dog and Olivia's dog too. And simultaneously, she herself was apparently possessed by some black shadow entity, and she actually told police it was an unknown stalker that had killed the two. When she finally went to trial, she pled not guilty due to insanity, and her defense team claimed she had had a psychotic break the night of the terrible events. In the end, she was sentenced to life for the 2 murders and 1 count of animal cruelty. Like, I get the voices were telling her that the kids were possessed, but they said nothing about the dogs, so why would she kill them? Just let them free, open the door, let them run away. Starting us off with number 10 is Satan's Enigma. Back in August of 1676, 31-year-old sister Maria Crucifissa della Concisione was found dead in her cell. Also, can we get a slow clap to me for even pronouncing that correctly? Yeah. Her face was covered in ink and she was found holding a letter written in a code that took centuries to decipher. Maria said the devil wrote the letter to try and get her away from the path of God. The letter that featured 14 lines translated to this: God thinks he can free mortals, the system works for no one. Perhaps now Styx is certain. In Roman and Greek mythology, the river Styx separates the living world from the netherworld. Maria was also said to have bipolar disorder or schizophrenia and was fighting against numerous evil spirits. I feel like the message had to be written by her while she was possessed or something, because after the fact, her behavior at the convent became very bizarre, and it's like, hello, Sister Maria, or what you doing? But what does the letter even mean? It took centuries to decode, surely it's important, but I feel like it just got decoded and no one cares. Coming in at number 9 is Sister Madeleine de Demondol. So back in 1611, there occurred a series of demonic possessions amongst the Ursuline nuns of Aix-en-Provence. 17-year-old aristocrat Madeleine entered the convent after having admitted she had had a relationship with Father Louis Graffiti. She was then sent to Aix to get away from Father Louis, but by 1608, things got ugly. The girl started showing signs of being possessed. She would shake, convulse, and it seemed to be contagious since the other nuns started doing the same. So many exorcism attempts were undertaken, but nothing was successful. In 1610, the exorcisms were still going on, and it was like the girls were all in competition with each other, like who was the most possessed. Like, oh, you can speak in tongues in Latin? Well, I can levitate, so there's that. Now, they all had their own demon personalities, and it was suspected that Father Louis had seduced Madeleine and caused her to become possessed. Almost all the nuns involved had some sort of infatuation with Father Louis. He was later tortured, wherein he confessed to having a pact with the devil, after which he was killed via strangulation and being burned. I mean, I'm not gonna say he low-key deserved it, but he high-key deserved it. At number 8, we have the Ursuline nuns. The case of Father Louis and those Ursuline nuns foreshadowed the events, including Father Urbain Ranzy, a Roman Catholic priest that lived in the Loudun part of France. He was under major scrutiny and received a lot of criticism for ignoring his celibacy vow, and if anything, he was known for having sexual relations with many women, and as someone who had an elevated sense of lustful depravity. By 1632, he was accused of sending the demon Asmodai to enchant a group of Ursuline nuns into committing evil acts and becoming his sex slaves. Mother Superior Jeanne d'Agnes claimed she had demonic dreams that Grandier was in, as well as visions of people that had already died. After numerous nuns had similar experiences, they all accused him of seduction and witchcraft, and he was arrested, then acquitted, and then re-arrested. During the second arrest, he was tortured by judges, after which they revealed a contract they found in his bedroom, which indicated he had signed a deal with Satan and many other demons. They saw it as evidence of him making a diabolical pact and convicted him of witchcraft and sentenced him to death. He was burnt at the stake, and rightfully so. Filling at number 7 slot is the murder. Marikika Irina Komichi was a nun who started hearing voices at the age of 23 years old. She thought it was the devil talking to her, telling her she was sinful, but other nuns refused to believe it, and she was treated for schizophrenia. However, she relapsed, and so a monk and 4 nuns tried something else, an exorcism. She was bound to a cross, gagged with a towel, and left in a dark room for 3 whole days with no food or water. That's proper torture. That's not even an exorcism. Like, hello, Human Rights Commission. Sadly, this doesn't end well, and Marikika ended up dying due to dehydration and suffocation. She was meant to go to a nearby village 10 days later, but never showed up. Daniel, the monk who led the exorcism, said he restrained her because she became violent and refused to drink the holy water, whereas a psychiatrist who treated her said this was all a symptom of schizophrenia and that she was most likely just having her first episode. But also, this just doesn't add up, because they thought that originally and she relapsed, so was it schizophrenia? Was it not? Either way, I guess we'll never really figure out what the true cause was, but Daniel and the 4 nuns were charged with aggravated murder and could face 25 years to life. Now at number 6 are the Louvier possessions. A lot of nun possessions going on in France in the 1600s, let me tell you that much. So back in 1625, Sister Madeleine Savant was said to be the first possession victim at the hands of Father Pickard, who apparently gave her magic potions and also got her pregnant. Do none of these people take celibacy seriously? Like, what is the point then? What is the point? Now, the possession occurred after his death, and she told authorities 2 men had kidnapped her and taken her to a witch's sabbat where she married the devil and had sex with him. Her confession made other nuns come forward too, who claimed that Father Pickard had taken them to secret sabbats for the same thing. The nuns would contort in unnatural shapes, speak in tongues, be uncontrollably violent, and shout obscenities like there was no tomorrow. Now, the Loudun possessions the decade before made this all not really that surprising, but the hysteria made it super public. All the exorcisms were seen by everyone, and eventually Madeleine was imprisoned for life and Father Pickard's body was exhumed and then burned. Cause even in death, we gon' burn your body. Coming in at number 5 is Benedetta. The book The Devil Within recounts the history of demonic possession and features the story of a nun called Benedetta. Back in 1619, Benedetta was interrogated to find out why she had engaged in a bunch of sexual acts with another nun called Bartolomea. She exclaimed that a male angel called Splendiletto had possessed her and would speak in his voice. But whenever she became him, it seemed like he was more demonic than he was angelic. Anytime it was him speaking, Benedetta was a lot more maniacal and lewd. But also, was she really possessed by a demonic entity, or was she just a scared closeted lesbian who didn't know what else to do? At number 4 is Dark Waters. This 1994 horror film features a convent containing quite a few disturbed nuns. They're seen practicing bizarre rituals that are in no way Christian, and they seem to be protecting or subduing some entity in the catacombs under the building. The main character Elizabeth goes to this convent, which is on a remote island, because that's where her mum gave birth to her right before dying. There she discovers demonic books in the library and gets attacked by a nun. She also finds the nuns whipping themselves in the basement and laying down in some strange formation. Elizabeth tries to figure out where her birth mother is, but the nuns burn alive the woman she tries to speak to. If that isn't bad enough, a nun at the convent called Sarah befriended her, but she's clearly not that good person. She cut up and nailed another nun to a chair. We later find out that Sister Sarah is half human, half demon, and is Elizabeth's sister. The girl's mum was a demon, and she's the one trapped inside the convent, which the nuns were trying so desperately to contain. Filling at number 3 slot are Two Fingers. This is another story featured in The Devil Within, and it gave me very Reagan from The Exorcist vibes. Apparently there was a nun at this French commune called Auxonne who got possessed. Again, there's only like 2 nuns on this list who aren't French, which is highly suspicious. What is it about French nuns that make them more susceptible to getting demonically possessed? Like, damn puppy. Anyway, during her possession, this nun apparently held up a giant heavy marble vase full of holy water. Now that sounds like a perfectly nunnish thing to do, except for the fact she lifted the entire thing with only 2 fingers. Now at number 2 is Valak, maybe the most infamous possessed nun to exist, even if she is just a fictional character in the Conjuring universe. However, what's not fictional is the demon Valak, who's described in the Lexici of Solomon grimoires. Valak as a demon can control, locate, and summon serpents at will, which is quite dangerous yet cool power to have if you ask me. In the movie, the duke that built the castle that is now the monastery was obsessed with the occult and summoned Valak himself back in the day, who took the form of the nun. Obviously in the movie, the demon has more abilities like telepathy, shape-shifting, and the ability to block clairvoyance. Valak kills all the nuns in the monastery and toys with Sister Irene by making her believe she's in the monastery with a bunch of other nuns, when really she's all alone, and Valak had already killed them all. And finally, at number 1 is Sister Magdalena de la Cruz. This Franciscan Spanish nun was actually honored as a living saint for a very long time. At 5 years old, Magdalena was known for her hardcore devotion to God and for the fact people thought she saw Jesus. She would have mystic heavenly visions, but with heavenly apparitions, there are also demonic ones to go with them. At some point, her heavenly visions slowed down, or the diabolical ones took over, because it said she made a pact with the devil. She goes on to become abbess of her convent, which is good since everyone wanted her to be, but bad since she was severe in her acts of penance and wanted her sisters to do the same. Magdalena would scare the other sisters and force them to confess to severe sins. Some would cry, but others went to a possessed state where they'd roll on the floor and contort their bodies before eventually going back to normal. She encouraged the nuns to use iron-tipped whips to self-inflict penance on themselves, and all this while she was being guided by the devil himself. In 1543, she falls extremely ill, and it's then that the priest suspects that she's possessed by a demon, so she started convulsing when trying to confess. The Inquisitor is brought in, and she reveals that all those years ago when everyone thought she had a vision of Jesus, it was actually the devil that she met. He had promised her fame and respect as long as she would obey him always, and so she agreed at 5 years old.
Alright, coming in at number 10, we have a cursed goat. I'm going to show you 2 clips here and you can tell me what they have in common. The first is from The Exorcist, a movie about an intense demonic possession, and the second is from a goat at a farm in the Netherlands. It's an unlikely coupling.
Det ville være fantastisk. Ja.
Okay, so similarities here. The video, simply called Demon Goat, was uploaded to YouTube in 2014 and has had over 230,000 views, and I have to say, it looks possessed. I'm scared. that's that. Do you want to hear something truly horrifying today? Of course you do. You clicked on this video. Coming into number 9, we have the parasites. So I came across an article in the Scientific American called Zombie Creatures: What Happens When Animals Are Possessed by a Parasitic Puppet Master. What a title. I had to click.
These spectacular, bizarre, bulging eyeballs are the snail's tentacles.
I did click, and it was pretty harrowing to read. I've linked the article in the description box so you can actually read the whole thing if you want to, it's very interesting. The article details how a wasp lays eggs on a spider's abdomen, which then causes it to become possessed and spin a very uncharacteristic web. It's a strange web, a very strange web indeed. Now this web happens to be great for supporting a cocoon for the newly born wasp larvae, which then will eat the spider alive after they hatch. Nature. As of yet, it's unknown how the parasite molds their host behavior to their advantage, and actually, it's pretty spooky. Honestly, nature is the biggest creep. Coming into number 8, we have the flies. Can flies get possessed? According to Andrea Perron, yes they can. Andrea lived in the real-life house that inspired the movie The Conjuring, the house famously investigated by super spook investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. The house is a spooky little place in Rhode Island, and the flies there are not what they seem. In Perron's book House of Darkness, House of Light, she claims that her home would be inexplicably filled with houseflies up to absolutely no good. She wrote that she would see clusters of them huddled together as if plotting their next move. She claimed it was far more than an infestation, it was a manifestation. She then added that, strangely, the flies would disappear as soon as they arrived. When the Warrens arrived to investigate the house, Lorraine even claimed that the flies were there with a purpose, as if they were an omen of evil to come. Honestly, I feel like all flies are harbingers of evil to come. It's kind of like the evil that comes from not being able to get a good night's sleep, which I don't like. Who on earth can sleep in a room with an active fly? Not me, my friend, not me. Coming into number 7, we have hyenas. Hyenas are basically considered to have the souls of demons, right? In a lot of cultures, especially in African tribes, it is thought that hyenas are possessed with a demonic force that can then in turn possess humans. Human possession by a hyena is a common tale in African lore. In Tanzania, hyenas are considered to be witches' familiars, and the witches are thought to ride them. I don't want to ride a hyena, I really don't, but then again, I'm not a witch. Or am I? Honestly, talking about hyenas in this way makes me think of that Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode, The Pack. Season 1 Buffy. It's controversial, but I'm here for it. I'm always here for it. Honestly, when I grew up, I wanted to be Buffy, and instead of, I guess, fighting scary things, I talk about scary things on the internet, so you know. Alright, is this scary or funny? You decide. At number 6, we have the demon cat from hell? Or someplace else. Wherever it is, I'm not sure I want to go. This video was uploaded to YouTube by AppRiderLove in November 2018, and it shows a very odd cat indeed. Have a little look.
What the f is that? What the f is that, a f***ing cat? Hey!
Like, what? That is the craziest looking cat that I have ever seen in my life. It's literally insane. I feel like we need to have another look at what might be causing that face.
Don't worry about it. Ma! Ma, there's a weird stray cat outside. It looks like grandma, the f***ing thing.
Oh, wow. Honestly, I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I'm utterly baffled. Like, the eyes, the tooth. It definitely looks like a possessed cat to me, but also, at the same time, I kind of find it cute. Anyone with me? Hands up. Meow. While we are doing videos of scary possessed animals, why don't you check out this spawn of Satan caught on camera at number 5. It's Moose the dog. A very confusing name for a dog. Is it a dog? Is it a moose? Whatever it is, you know, filled with the fires of hell. In March 2015, Scott Baxter uploaded a video called My Girlfriend's Dog is Possessed, and, well, upon reviewing the footage, as suspected, this might actually be fact. In the video description, he wrote, my girlfriend had to go to work and she gave her dog Moose a new bone. He was in no mood to share. I absolutely love how when he wrote this, in the description box he used inverted commas for Moose as if like, allegedly Moose. Moose, if that is your real name. Anyway, let's have a look at Moose.
What you got there, Moose? Is that a bone? Do you have a bone?
Blah! He does not want anyone near that bone. The video received a lot of views for an uploader with a small number of subscribers, and some of the comments were absolutely gold. Smell Nice said, "This dog needs Jesus," and Hensy Smothers said, "Yo, that dog ain't possessed, it just doesn't like you." What do you think? Enemies or get Jesus on the phone? Should we have another look?
I just want to see what you have. Just give me a lid.
Ah yes, that confirms it. Jesus it is then. Hello Jesus. Demon dog. On the loose. Thank you. I hope you are sitting comfortably for number 4, as ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Reddit. We have the story of the possessed parrot. I feel like a lot of parrots have got a lot of things going on. Animals that can speak human languages, I mean, what is that about? In 2016, the Shoegaxer asked the good people of Reddit to see if their parrot is possessed by Satan. A good question. Why did they ask? Well, it seems that the pretty Polly very much enjoyed the Quentin Tarantino movie Inglourious Bastards, and they got particularly excited in their cage when Nazis were on the screen, and only when Nazis were on the screen.
Yeah.
One thing led to another, and, well, I'll read you what happened next. The poster said, "I ran a little experiment tonight. I looked up some satanic Latin chants and started reading them aloud. My parrot started getting really excited. He started bobbing up and down, doing his usual talking low, buzzy tone thing. I tried to distract him by giving him a treat, but he rejected it and he didn't shut up for several minutes. Finally, at his bedtime, I'm about to put the blanket over the cage, and he mimicked human laughter and didn't stop for a minute. Honestly, cursed. I'm gonna go out there and answer your Reddit question. Yes, your parrot is possessed. What are you gonna do about it? Do Ghostbusters do parrot possessions? I don't know. Coming into number 3, we have Princess the Paranormal Poodle. New York artist Olga Horvat believed that her poodle was possessed and brought her bad luck, with a capital B. Purebred Princess arrived at Horvat's home in New York, and soon her owner met a string of ill fortune. An intense bedbug infestation, hefty exterminator fees, almost being evicted, a rare autoimmune disease, a serious car accident. Horvat claims that her daughter started even hearing voices in her head. All because of the dog. It seems that the woman only began to realize that the dog might be possessed after 4 months. She said she was happy, but something was manipulating her. I'm convinced that something was attached, whether or not it was the spirit of another animal, human, or even an extraterrestrial. What? So what was the resolution here? How did she unpossess Princess? Well, you'll be pleased to know that Olga started making energy shield pendants to block electromagnetic energy and therefore evil spirits. And yes, they are commercially available. Was this all a marketing ploy? I'd never suggest it. I wouldn't. Coming into number 2, we have the cursed pig goat. A goat, a human, a pig-looking thing, all in one. This absolute freak was born to a goat in the Philippines, making headlines in 2018. Now, the creature was born by a cesarean section on a farm, and locals were worried that the creature was actually a cursed mutant devil. The obvious answer. Have a look and tell me what you think. Locals suspected that the pregnant goat that birthed the creature was at some point possessed by the actual factual devil, leading to the defected kid. Now, sadly, the mother and the kids died after the birth. Okay, as we move into the number 1 spot, I just want to give you a bit of a trigger warning, because this is one of the saddest stories I've ever heard, and every time I think about it, it makes me just feel really, really blue. But I'm going to tell you about it. At number 1, we have Travis the Chimp. The story of Travis the Chimp is honestly a really, really heartbreaking one of the worst I've come across while working here. Travis was the beloved pet of Sandra Herold, who adopted him at just 3 days old. Travis was born in 1995 and lived to the age of 13. In his 13 years with Sandra, Travis became famous not just in Stamford, Connecticut where he lived, but across America. He appeared in TV commercials for Pepsi and Old Navy. Travis would pose for photos, dress himself, water plants, feed his owner's horses, eat at the table with the family. He was a member of the family. He loved watching baseball. He knew exactly when the ice cream truck would be going by his house. In 2009, Travis absolutely lost it, uncharacteristically. Travis had never been violent, but one day he snapped when playing with Sandra's close friend, Charla Nash. He mauled her horrendously. He would not get off her. He went nuts. It was as if he was possessed. Now, unfortunately, she lost her nose, an ear, both her hands, her eyesight. Possession is perhaps one word, but perhaps animals are, animals, and we can't expect them to behave as humans would. Is there an important lesson to be learned here? Honestly, I think there is. In at number 10, we have the eBay mirror. So I remember reading this story a few years ago and being absolutely fascinated. Two guys living in a shared house in Muswell Hill, London, started experiencing weird goings on when their landlord hung a mirror in the house. This mirror was reportedly found in a skip, or dumpster, right outside the property. 20-year-old student Joseph Birch and 34-year-old painter Sotiris Charalambous say that they were immediately met with bad feelings, followed by bad luck, misery, and even sickness. Charalambous even said he woke up in the night screaming with stabbing pains. He attributed all of this horror to the mirror. Things became enough for the pair when Birch said he saw flickering shadows and glimpses of black darkness coming from the mirror. He then woke up with scratch marks all over himself. The pair put the mirror on eBay for £100 and sold it for just over the asking price. I, for one, would not want to own that mirror though.
Okay, moving on to number 9, we have bunk beds. In 1987, a haunted bunk bed in Wisconsin became a topic of national coverage when a family dramatically fled their home in winter after reports of hauntings. Later, the TV show Unsolved Mysteries documented the paranormal activities. It all started when Alan and Debbie Tallman bought bunk beds from a secondhand shop and immediately noticed strange goings-on in their home in a small town of Horica. Soon the family noticed the radio would switch on its own, and the children who slept in the bed saw an ugly old woman in their room. As things started opening and closing on their own accord in the same room as the bed, the family got their local pastor in, who felt that there was a devil in the bed. After things went bad to worse, the family destroyed the bunk beds and left the house. I think they did the right thing. And now moving on to number 8, we have more craziness. We got the teddy bear. Teddy bears are supposed to be used for, cuddling and comfort, not for smothering people. One teddy bear in India caused a stir on the internet in July of 2016, so it happened earlier on this year in the summertime, as footage was released on YouTube of a reportedly possessed bear. Uploader Paris Diwa captured the video in which the huge stuffed bear seems to move on its own. I mean, is this real life right now? Many YouTube viewers are questioning the authenticity of the footage, but who knows?
Warning, this next haunted object has actually caused people who see the picture of it to experience shocking symptoms. Are you ready, Landon?
Are we gonna show them the picture?
Yeah,
Ooh.
And there's some shocking stuff going on, so close your eyes to this next one if you're scared of that kind of thing.
I'm scared.
In at number 7, we have Peggy. In 2015, footage of a creepy doll caused absolute chaos around the world, inciting paranormal enthusiasts, with many feeling chest pains and experiencing headaches and visions after viewing the pictures or videos of her. British paranormal investigator Jane Harris, based in Shropshire, says that she was inundated with messages after images and footage of Peggy were posted on the internet. Harris runs an organisation called Haunted Dolls and was given the doll by a petrified woman. She is thought to have the power to visit people in their dreams, even haunting one woman to warn her about her cat that died the next day. Spooky. One woman even said that she had a heart attack just hours after viewing a picture of Peggy. Mediums who have worked with Peggy believe that she is linked to the Holocaust. Terrifying.
Following that, now at number 6, Bassano vase. The story goes that a 15th century carved silver vase was given to an Italian bride on her wedding night in Napoli. That very evening, she was murdered and vowed to seek vengeance. After her death, it became clear that the family members that her spirit had somehow possessed the vase and caused death and misery to all those who touched it. After a period of time, the vase was buried and reportedly unearthed in 1988. The vase contained a warning note about the bad luck associated with its possession. The owner auctioned it for 4 million lira, so that's around $2,500 at the time. The new owner died and triggered a similar pattern in the new era of deaths. The vase has now been buried, and you should not go looking for it.
Okay, this really creeps me out. In at number 5, we have the Anguished Man painting. To be honest, looking at this painting, I have absolutely no idea who would want to own it. It is even more terrifying than a Phoebe Buffay creation. Sean Robinson acquired the Anguished Man painting from his grandmother, who believed that the artist used part of his own blood to paint the picture. The painting is said to be haunted by the spirit of the artist, and Sean has even set up a YouTube channel to document some of the crazy goings on surrounding the picture. This includes doors slamming and the air in the room changing to make it all cold. It is now said to be locked in the basement of Mr. Robinson's house, where I think it should stay forever, and then he should move, and no one should ever go there.
Robert the doll, another doll, and this one is horrifying.
Sorry, did you say another doll?
Another doll.
I'm out of here.
There's too many dolls on this list. And as Rebecca walks off, we continue. Everybody meet Robert. Robert is a 20th century sailor doll that used to belong to Eugene Otto. Eugene used to blame many naughty things he did on Robert, and the pair would often be overheard talking. Eugene's parents assuming Robert's voice was really Eugene. When Eugene died in 1974, Robert was left in the attic and was discovered by the next owners in the home. And they had a 10-year-old daughter. The small girl was terrified of Robert and claimed he wanted to kill her. Neighbors of the house would swear they saw Robert at the window on occasion, and the plumber would work at the house found the doll to move across the room on its own. A reporter from the area, Malcolm Ross, visited the house to see Robert and was disturbed to sense that Robert was listening to his conversation and was understanding him. A final doll, and perhaps the scariest of them all, we have the basis for the movie The Conjuring and Annabelle. At number 3, we have Annabelle the doll. Annabelle currently lives in a glass box at the Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, run by Ed and Lorraine Warren. The Warrens received the doll after it lived with a student nurse and her roommate in the 1970s. The doll behaved strangely, so the pair contacted a medium who suggested she was haunted by a dead girl named Annabelle Higgins. The pair tried to nurture and care for the girl, but she turned out to be malicious and evil, leading the pair to give the doll away. That was a good choice.
Have we finished talking about dolls?
I have a feeling we're not finished.
We have. I think we have.
Okay.
Promise me, because if not, I'm not coming back.
Okay, moving on from dolls, we got
Yeah, moving on from dolls, we have Busby's stoop chair. Mystery. Now located on the ceiling at the Thirsk Museum in North Yorkshire, the infamous Busby stoop chair has been linked to many deaths over the years. The story goes that a Yorkshireman named Thomas Busby, who was a fraudster and a drunkard, loved his wooden chair. In 1702, he fell in love with a young woman named Elizabeth Howarty. Her father, Daniel, did not approve and came to drag Elizabeth away from their home in a local inn. As Busby arrived back in the inn, he was most offended to find Daniel Howarty sitting in his favourite chair, so he murdered him. Normal reaction. As he was later tried and hung for the murder, he swore a curse that all that sit in his best chair will die. This chair ever since has been rumoured to be haunted by Busby himself. The chair stayed in the inn for years, reportedly taking the lives of 63 people who sat in it. One chimney sweep who sat in the chair while drinking at the pub was found hanged nearby the next morning, and it's said that all those who sat in the chair ever since who went to war did not come back. As late as the 1970s, 2 people died after sitting in the chair. Luckily, it was then taken away and put in a museum and strung up on the ceiling so no one can sit in it ever again. Okay, we are here at number 1. The possessed items on this list seem to have a varying degree of legitimacy. However, this last one really does have an irrefutably concerning history. I can't get over this. At number 1, we have Franz Ferdinand's car. Many history buffs will know that World War I was triggered by the murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife in Bosnia. The pair were in their luxury Graf and Stift limousine, which stalled at the very wrong moment outside a cafe from which a man who'd previously tried to assassinate him was just exiting. What a crazy coincidence. Their deaths, probably caused by the stalled car in part, were not the last tragedy tragedy to befall the limo. The car's second owner, General Potiorek, went insane after driving the car and was soon committed to an asylum. Many say the car is possessed by an evil spirit. In fact, throughout the war and the period shortly after, the limo was involved in 6 accidents and 13 deaths. Why are people still driving this thing? If we were also to attribute the car as the direct cause of the death of Franz Ferdinand, and thus the sparker of the First World War, it could also be directly linked to the death of 17 million people, which in turn set the stage for the death of 60 million people in World War II. So that car has some blood on its hands. Suffice to say, after a final death spree in which 5 people travelling to a wedding were killed, the car was finally donated to the War History Museum of Vienna in 1926 and has caused no deaths since. Thank God.